The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers for the third time in 10 minutes, clattering against the concrete floor of my garage like a death rattle. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand, leaving another black smudge to join the collection already there. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Ethan, you're losing your touch, I muttered to myself, crouching down to retrieve the tool. At 45, my knees protested every movement, reminding me that my days crawling under cars were numbered. The classic Mustang above me seemed to mock my struggles. Its cherry red paint job gleamed under the fluorescent lights, pristine except for the engine trouble that had brought it to my shop. Just like everything else in this godforsaken town, beautiful on the surface, rotten underneath. Ethan, Laura's voice cut through the garage like nails on a chalkboard. I'm heading out. I rolled out from under the Mustang, my back screaming in protest. My wife stood in the doorway connecting the garage to our house, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she wore a dress that probably cost more than most people in our town made in a week. Girls' night again? I asked, wiping my hands on a rag that had seen better days. You know it. She flashed me that smile, the one that used to make my heart skip a beat, back when I believed it was genuine. Don't wait up. I watched her walk to her BMW, noting the new perfume that filled the air around her. Something expensive, something she definitely hadn't been wearing that morning. The way she moved was different, too. There was an energy about her, an excitement that I hadn't seen directed at me in years. As she backed out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of something on the passenger seat. A second phone. Laura had always been particular about her things, organized to a fault. She wouldn't carry two phones unless she had something to hide. The sound of her engine fading into the distance left me alone with my thoughts and the half-assembled Mustang. I'd spent 20 years in Black Ops before settling down in this sleepy Maine town, learning to read people, to spot deception from a mile away. Those skills had kept me alive in places where trust was a luxury that could get you eliminated. Now, standing in my own garage, wearing coveralls stained with motor oil and regret, I felt those old instincts stirring. The way Laura had been acting lately, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden interest in our life insurance policy, the nights out that were becoming more frequent, it all painted a picture I didn't want to see. But ignoring problems had never been my style. I walked over to my workbench and pulled out a small device I'd hoped never to use. It looked innocent enough, like a USB drive, but it was capable of cloning a phone's data in minutes. Old habits die hard, and I'd kept a few tools from my previous life, just in case. The front door chimed, and I quickly pocketed the device. Footsteps echoed through the house, too light to be Laura returning. Ethan, you in there? Tina Haskell's voice carried through the connecting door. I sighed. Laura's best friend was the last person I wanted to deal with right now. Tina was the kind of woman who thrived on drama, always stirring the pot, always inserting herself into situations where she didn't belong. In the garage, I called back, not bothering to hide my annoyance. Tina appeared in the doorway, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans that were too tight and a smile that was too bright. She'd always been attractive in an obvious way, but there was something calculating behind her eyes that had always put me on edge. Working late again? She asked, stepping into the garage uninvited. Car doesn't fix itself. I turned back to the Mustang, hoping she'd take the hint. Laura mentioned you've been putting in long hours lately. She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, cheaper than Laura's, but applied with the same heavy hand. She worries about you, you know. I almost laughed. Laura hadn't worried about me in years. I'm sure she does. She's out with the girls tonight, blowing off some steam. You should try it sometime. Tina's hand brushed against my arm as she spoke. Maybe we could grab a drink sometime, you know, just as friends. There it was, the real reason for her visit. I'd seen this play before, the concerned friend, the helpful suggestion, the innocent invitation that wasn't innocent at all. In my old life, people like Tina were called assets, useful idiots who could be manipulated into providing information or services. Thanks, but I'm good, I said, stepping away from her touch. Her smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. Well, if you change your mind, you know where to find me. After she left, I stood in the silence of my garage, pieces of a puzzle starting to form in my mind. Laura's mysterious nights out, Tina's sudden interest in my social life, the second phone, the life insurance questions. Individually, they might mean nothing. I pulled out my own phone and scrolled through Laura's recent calls. Most were to numbers I recognized, her sister, her business partner, various clients from her boutique. But there were several to a number I didn't know, all within the past month. 20 years of marriage, and it might all come down to this moment. I could pretend I hadn't noticed anything, go back to fixing cars and living in ignorant bliss, or I could find out the truth and deal with whatever consequences came with it. I looked at the cloning device in my hand. Such a small thing to hold such destructive potential. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "Having so much fun. Don't wait up. Love you." The message was followed by a photo of her and 3 other women at what looked like a restaurant. But something was off. The lighting was wrong, the background too generic. It looked staged, like she'd taken it earlier and saved it for just this purpose. I'd made my decision before I even realized it. Tomorrow, I'd find a way to get close to that second phone. Tonight, I'd start watching my wife the way I used to watch targets in hostile territory. Because if Laura thought she was married to some naive small-town mechanic, she was about to learn that the devil she knew was far more dangerous than any devil she might be planning to meet. The Mustang's engine block stared back at me, its components spread across my workbench like the pieces of my marriage. Some things could be fixed with the right tools and enough patience. Others needed to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. The next morning brought rain that drummed against the garage roof like machine gun fire, a sound that took me back to places I'd rather forget. I'd been up since 4, unable to sleep, my mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider. Laura had stumbled in around 2 in the morning, reeking of wine and that expensive perfume. She'd mumbled something about Tina drinking too much and needing a ride home, but her story had more holes than a target at a shooting range. Now she sat at our kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone, the regular one, with the practiced indifference of someone who had nothing to hide, or someone who was very good at hiding things. "Big day at the shop?" she asked without looking up. "Same as always." I poured myself coffee from the pot she'd made, noting that it was weaker than usual. Laura was meticulous about her coffee, had been for 20 years. Small changes in routine were often the first sign that someone's priorities had shifted. "I'll be at the boutique most of the day. We're expecting a big shipment from New York." She finally looked up, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? It was gone before I could be sure. "Sounds exciting." She gathered her things, purse, keys, and yes, 2 phones, and headed for the door. "Oh, I almost forgot. I made an appointment with our insurance agent for next week. It's been years since we reviewed our policies." My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. "Any particular reason?" "Just being responsible. We're not getting any younger, Ethan. We should make sure everything's in order." Her smile was perfect, practiced. "You know, in case something happens." After she left, I sat in the silence of our kitchen, staring at the chair she'd just vacated. In case something happens. The words echoed in my head like a threat. I'd heard those exact words before, in a briefing room in Afghanistan, from an intelligence officer who was trying to convince us that a local asset was trustworthy. 2 days later, that asset led half my unit into an ambush. I'd been one of only 3 survivors. Some lessons you never forget. I spent the morning at the garage, going through the motions of work while my mind planned. Mrs. Patterson's sedan needed new brakes. Tom Bradley's pickup had a transmission leak, and the Mustang still glared at me from the lift, its problems more complex than I'd initially thought. Around noon, Mike Sullivan pushed through the front door, bringing the smell of rain and cigarettes with him. Mike was my oldest friend in town, a former Army Ranger who'd settled here around the same time I had. He ran the Last Chance bar on the outskirts of town, a dive that served as the unofficial headquarters for local gossip. "You look like hell," he said, settling his bulk into the chair beside my desk. "Thanks for the pep talk." "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept?" Mike had the kind of eyes that missed nothing, a occupational hazard from our shared past. "You're wound tighter than a spring." I set down my wrench and really looked at my friend. Mike was pushing 50, his red hair now more gray than anything else, but he still carried himself like the soldier he'd once been. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be him. "Hypothetically," I said, "if you suspected someone close to you was planning something bad, how would you go about confirming it?" Mike's expression didn't change, but I saw his posture shift slightly. "Hypothetically, I'd say that depends on what kind of bad we're talking about. The kind that might involve life insurance and mysterious phone calls." "Ah." Mike nodded slowly. "That kind of bad?" He was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Hypothetically, I'd say the first step is gathering evidence. Can't make decisions based on suspicion alone. And if that evidence confirmed your worst fears, then you'd have some choices to make." Mike's voice was carefully neutral. But I'd also say that in my experience, people who are planning something usually aren't as smart as they think they are. They make mistakes, leave trails. What kind of trails? Phone records, credit card statements, changes in routine. People think they're being clever, but they're creatures of habit. Break the habit, and you create a pattern that someone with the right skills can follow. I thought about Laura's new perfume, her sudden interest in insurance, the second phone. And if someone with the right skills wanted to follow that pattern? Mike smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then I'd say that someone should be very careful about what they might find, and even more careful about what they do with that information. After Mike left, I closed the garage early and drove to the electronics store in the next town over. I paid cash for a small GPS tracker, the kind worried parents use to monitor their teenagers. It wasn't military grade, but it would do for what I had in mind. That evening, while Laura was in the shower, I slipped into the garage and attached the tracker to the underside of her BMW. It took less than 2 minutes, and when I was done, there was no sign it had ever been there. I also took the opportunity to clone her second phone, the one she thought I didn't know about. The device I'd retrieved from my old kit worked perfectly, copying everything in under 30 seconds. Back in my workshop, I connected the cloned data to an old laptop I kept for parts orders. Text messages going back 3 weeks, all to and from a contact listed only as A. The early messages were flirtatious, the kind of thing that made my stomach turn. But as I scrolled through them, the tone changed, became more serious, more calculating. E is getting suspicious. We need to move faster. Laura. Patience. Everything has to look natural. A. What if he finds out before we're ready? Laura. Then we move to plan B. But it won't come to that. Trust me. A. I do trust you. I love you. Laura. Love you too. Soon we'll have everything we want. A. The most recent exchange was from that morning, while I'd been working in the garage. He asked about the insurance meeting. I think he knows something. Laura. Stay calm. Stick to the plan. After tonight, it won't matter what he suspects. A. Are you sure about this? There has to be another way. Laura. There is no other way. He's not going to just disappear, and we can't wait forever. The policy pays double for accidental death. I know. I never thought it would come to this. Laura. Cold feet now? We've come too far to back out. Besides, you said yourself he's not the man you married. He's just a broken-down mechanic now. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll do my part. Laura. Good girl. See you at 8. And Laura? After tonight, we'll never have to worry about money again. I stared at the screen, reading the messages over and over, hoping I'd misunderstood something, that there was some innocent explanation for what I was seeing. But 20 years of marriage, and 20 years before that in the intelligence community had taught me to recognize the truth, even when I didn't want to see it. My wife was planning to have me eliminated. The shower was still running upstairs. I had maybe 10 minutes before Laura finished and started getting ready for her girls' night. 10 minutes to process the fact that the woman I'd loved for 2 decades, the woman I'd built a life with, was plotting my murder. I looked at the GPS tracker app on my phone. Laura's car was still in our driveway, but in a few hours it would lead me to wherever she was meeting A, and then I'd know everything. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, my mind already shifting into operational mode. The hurt and betrayal were still there, burning in my chest like acid, but they were secondary now. I'd been betrayed before by people I'd trusted with my life. The difference was that this time, I wasn't constrained by rules of engagement or international law. This time, it was personal. Laura's voice drifted down from upstairs, humming some song I didn't recognize. She sounded happy, carefree, like someone looking forward to a bright future. She had no idea that her husband, the broken-down mechanic she thought she could dispose of, was about to remind her exactly what kind of man she'd married. The shower shut off. Showtime. I pretended to be asleep when Laura crept out of the house at 7:30, but I was watching through the bedroom curtains as she backed out of the driveway. She dressed carefully, not too fancy, but nicer than her usual girls' night attire, the kind of outfit someone wears when they want to look good for a lover. My phone buzzed with the GPS alert as her car started moving. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then slipped out through the garage, taking my own truck instead of the Harley. The bike was faster, but the truck was anonymous, just another working man's vehicle on the rain-slicked roads. The tracker led me through the winding back roads that connected our small town to the highway. Laura was being careful, taking a route that avoided the main streets where she might be seen by someone she knew. Smart, but not smart enough. She ended up at the Riverside Motel, a rundown establishment that rented rooms by the hour to truckers and cheating spouses. I parked across the street behind an abandoned gas station and watched through binoculars as she knocked on the door of room 12. The man who answered was not what I'd expected. Adam Fenner was someone I knew by sight, if not by name. He worked as an insurance adjuster for one of the big companies, the kind of guy who showed up at accident scenes with a clipboard and an attitude. He was younger than me by maybe 5 years, with the kind of gym-built physique that screamed overcompensation. His hair was perfectly styled, his clothes expensive, but trying too hard to look casual. He pulled Laura into the room with an urgency that made my jaw clench. Through the thin motel curtains, I could see their silhouettes moving together, and I had to look away before I did something stupid. Instead, I focused on Adam's car, a black Audi that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. I memorized the license plate and made a mental note to run a background check. If Laura thought she was trading up, she was about to learn that her new boyfriend had secrets of his own. I was about to leave when another car pulled into the motel lot. I raised the binoculars again and cursed under my breath. Tina Haskell climbed out of her Honda and walked straight to room 12, not bothering to look around or act like she was trying to hide. She knocked once and was immediately let inside. So it wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. I sat in my truck for another hour, watching and thinking. 3 people in that motel room, planning God knows what. The text messages I'd read earlier took on new meaning. This wasn't just about Laura wanting out of our marriage. This was about money, about insurance payouts, about making me disappear permanently. When they finally emerged, they left separately. First Tina, then Adam, then Laura. I followed my wife home, staying far enough back to avoid detection, my mind racing with possibilities. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, I had the beginnings of a plan. The next morning, I called in sick to the garage for the first time in 5 years. Instead of working on cars, I spent the day working on something far more important. Adam Fenner's background check revealed some interesting information. He'd been married twice, both ending in messy divorces where his wives accused him of financial manipulation. He had gambling debts, a cocaine habit he thought he kept secret, and a reputation among his coworkers as someone who would do anything for money. Perfect blackmail material, if I needed it. Tina's history was less dramatic, but equally useful. She'd been fired from her last 3 jobs for stealing, had maxed out her credit cards, and was facing eviction from her apartment. Desperate people did desperate things, and Tina was clearly desperate. As for Laura, I knew her better than she thought I did. She was smart, calculating, but she had one fatal flaw. She underestimated people she thought were beneath her. She saw me as a simple mechanic, a relic from her past that she'd outgrown. She had no idea that her husband had spent 20 years learning how to eliminate people in ways that looked like accidents. The irony wasn't lost on me. That evening, I was waiting in the kitchen when Laura came home from the boutique. She looked tired, stressed, the kind of expression someone wears when they are carrying a heavy burden. "How was your day?" I asked, not looking up from the newspaper I was pretending to read. "Fine, busy." She set her purse on the counter, and I noted that she kept both phones close to her body. "What about you? Mike said you called in sick." "Just needed a day to think." I folded the paper and looked at her directly. "We need to talk." Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or guilt. "About what?" "About us. About where we're headed." I kept my voice calm, conversational. 20 years is a long time to be married. Sometimes people grow apart. "Ethan, I'm not blaming you," I continued. "Maybe we both changed. Maybe we want different things now." She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time we talked about what comes next. Honestly." For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Her mouth opened, and I could see the words forming behind her eyes. But then her expression hardened, and the moment passed. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "I'm happy. We're happy." "Are we?" "Of course we are." But her voice lacked conviction, and she couldn't quite meet my eyes. I nodded slowly, as if accepting her answer. "Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I'd hate to think you were planning something behind my back." This time, there was no mistaking the fear that flashed across her face. "Why would you say that?" "No reason. Just that sometimes people get ideas, you know? They think the grass is greener somewhere else, or that they'd be better off without certain complications." Laura stood up abruptly. "I think I'll take a bath. It's been a long day." As she headed for the stairs, I called after her. "Oh, and Laura, that insurance meeting next week. Let's make sure we go over everything carefully. I want to make sure we're both protected." She paused at the bottom of the stairs, her back to me. Of course, we'll go over everything. After she disappeared upstairs, I allowed myself a small smile. The game was officially on. I spent the rest of the evening in my workshop, ostensibly working on the Mustang but actually planning my next moves. Laura thought she was hunting me, but she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd revealed her intentions to someone who'd spent his entire adult life learning how to hunt. Now it was time to show her the difference between a predator and prey. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll find more than you bargained for." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Looking forward to it." Let them think they were intimidating me. Let them believe their plan was still secret. The more confident they became, the more mistakes they'd make, and I'd be watching every single one. The threatening text had come from a burner phone, untraceable and anonymous, but whoever sent it had made their first real mistake. They'd revealed that they knew I was investigating them. That meant someone was watching me, which also meant I could watch them back. I started the next morning by installing security cameras around my property, small wireless units that would record everything to a cloud server. If someone was planning to make my death look like an accident, they'd need to get close to my house, my truck, or my garage. Now I'd have evidence of exactly who was doing what. The morning routine with Laura was tense but civil. She was trying too hard to act normal, asking about my plans for the day, commenting on the weather, making small talk that felt forced and artificial. I played along, acting like the oblivious husband she thought I was. "I might stop by the bar tonight," I mentioned casually as she gathered her things for work. "Haven't seen Mike in a few days." "That sounds nice," she said, but I caught her glancing at her phone, the second one. "I'll probably be late again. End-of-month inventory." "No problem. Take your time." After she left, I drove to the garage but didn't open for business. Instead, I spent the morning modifying my truck. Nothing dramatic, just some basic precautions. I swapped in reinforced brake lines, fitted an engine shutoff I alone could trigger, and tucked a compact blast detector beneath the hood. If someone tried to tamper with my vehicle, I'd know about it immediately. Around noon, I got an unexpected visitor. Detective Rachel Norris had been with the state police for 15 years before transferring to our local department. She was smart, thorough, and one of the few people in town who knew about my background. We'd worked together on a missing person case a few years back, and she'd earned my respect with her professionalism and discretion. "Ethan," she said, stepping into the garage. "Got a minute?" "For you? Always." I wiped my hands on a rag and gave her my full attention. Rachel was in her early 40s, with short brown hair and the kind of steady gaze that made criminals confess things they'd never intended to reveal. She wore her authority comfortably, without the swagger that marked insecure cops. "I had an interesting conversation yesterday," she said, leaning against my workbench. "Someone called in a tip about suspicious activity in your neighborhood." "What kind of suspicious activity?" "The caller said they'd seen someone lurking around your property at night, maybe casing the place for a break-in." Rachel's expression was carefully neutral. "Thing is, when I checked the call logs, the number was disconnected. Burner phone." I felt the pieces clicking into place. "Someone wanted you to start watching my house." "That's what I thought too. Question is, why would someone want police attention on you? Most criminals try to avoid that." "Maybe they're not trying to avoid attention," I said slowly. "Maybe they're trying to create a narrative." Rachel nodded. "Husband reports suspicious activity, becomes paranoid, starts acting erratically. Then something happens to him, and everyone remembers how worried he'd been lately. Setting up the story before the crime? It's a theory." Rachel studied my face carefully. "Want to tell me why someone might want to create that kind of narrative about you?" I considered my options. Rachel was honest, competent, and trustworthy, but she was also a cop, bound by rules and procedures that might interfere with what I needed to do. On the other hand, having law enforcement aware of the situation might provide some protection. Hypothetically, I said, if someone wanted their spouse to disappear, and they wanted it to look like an accident, how would they go about it? Hypothetically, they'd need to establish a pattern of behavior that explained the accident, make the victim look unstable, paranoid, maybe suicidal. They'd also need an alibi for when it happened, and they'd probably want to make sure there was a financial motive that didn't point back to them. Life insurance. That's the big one, but they'd have to be careful about timing. Take out a big policy and then have the spouse die 6 months later. That raises flags. Better to increase existing coverage gradually, or wait a decent interval after any changes. I thought about Laura's sudden interest in reviewing our insurance policies. What if the policies were already in place, purchased years ago? Then you're looking at someone who's either very patient or very desperate. Rachel's voice was carefully casual. This still hypothetical, Ethan? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with an alert from the security system. Someone was in my backyard. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone and saw a figure in dark clothing moving around the side of my house. They were trying to stay out of sight, but the camera angle caught them clearly. It was Tina. I need to go, I told Rachel, showing her the phone screen. She looked at the image, then at me. Want some backup? Not yet, but stay close to your radio. I drove home fast but quietly, parking a block away and approaching through the neighbor's yard. Tina was crouched behind my truck, doing something to the undercarriage. I could see tools scattered around her, and what looked like a small device in her hands. I watched her work for several minutes, documenting everything with my phone's camera. She was installing something, a GPS tracker maybe, or something more sinister. When she finished, she gathered her tools and headed for the street where a car was waiting. Adam Fenner was behind the wheel. I let them drive away before examining what Tina had done to my truck. It wasn't a tracker. It was a small explosive device, crude but effective, wired to the brake lights. The next time I hit the brakes hard, the device would detonate, probably rupturing the gas tank and making the whole thing look like a tragic accident. I carefully photographed the device from every angle before disarming it. The construction was amateur but functional, the kind of thing someone might learn from internet tutorials. Tina had been busy. My phone rang. Laura. Hi, honey, she said, her voice bright and cheerful. I was thinking maybe we could have dinner together tonight. It's been too long since we had a real date. That sounds great, I said, still staring at the bomb that had been meant to eliminate me. What's the occasion? No occasion. I just realized how much I've been neglecting you lately. I want to make it up to you. I'd like that. Perfect. There's this new place out on Route 7. Very romantic. I'll make reservations for 8. Route 7 was a winding mountain road with steep drops and sharp curves, the kind of place where a car accident might send someone over a cliff, making it impossible to determine exactly what had caused the crash. Sounds perfect, I said. I'll see you at home around 7. After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time, thinking. They'd escalated faster than I'd expected, moving from planning to action in a matter of days. That suggested either desperation or confidence, maybe both. But they had also made another mistake. They'd assumed I would drive my truck to dinner, that I wouldn't notice their little surprise until it was too late. They were thinking like amateurs, not like someone who'd spent 20 years staying alive in hostile territory. I called Rachel back. I'm going to need that backup after all, I said, but not yet. Give me until tomorrow morning. If you don't hear from me by then, you'll want to start looking for 3 people, my wife, Adam Fenner, and Tina Haskell. Ethan, I'm not going to do anything illegal, I assured her. But I am going to make sure they understand that I'm not the easy target they think I am. Be careful. Always am. That evening, I got dressed for dinner, making sure to act like the loving husband who was looking forward to a romantic evening with his wife. I even brought flowers, roses, Laura's favorites, though I doubted she remembered that about herself anymore. But instead of taking my truck, I took the Harley. And instead of following the route to the restaurant on Route 7, I took a detour that would let me see who was following me. It was time to turn the hunters into the hunted. The restaurant Laura had chosen was perfect for what she had in mind. Isolated, expensive, and situated on a stretch of Route 7 that featured several scenic overlooks with 100-foot drops. I could picture the plan. A romantic dinner, a few drinks to make sure I was relaxed, then the drive home on dark, winding roads where an accident would be easy to arrange. What they hadn't counted on was me arriving on the Harley instead of in the truck with their little explosive surprise. I parked the bike where it couldn't be seen from the restaurant and waited. Laura's BMW pulled into the lot right on time, but she wasn't alone. Adam was following in his Audi, staying back far enough to avoid being obvious. A third car, Tina's Honda, completed their little convoy. I gave them a few minutes to get settled, then walked into the restaurant like a man without a care in the world. Laura was sitting at a corner table, looking stunning in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Her face lit up when she saw me, but I caught the flicker of confusion when she realized I hadn't driven the truck. You look beautiful, I said, kissing her cheek and sitting down across from her. Thank you. You look pretty good yourself. Her smile was perfect, but her eyes kept darting toward the window where she could see the parking lot. Where's your truck? Bike seemed more romantic, I said. Hope you don't mind riding back together. Something shifted in her expression. Disappointment, maybe, or fear. Of course not. I love the bike. We ordered dinner and made small talk. playing the part of a happily married couple while both of us calculated our next moves. Laura kept checking her phone, sending what I assumed were updates to her partners. I pretended not to notice, focusing on my steak and acting like a man who trusted his wife completely. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night," Laura said as we waited for dessert, "about people growing apart." "Oh? Maybe you're right. Maybe we have been drifting." She reached across the table and took my hand. "But I don't want to lose what we have. You mean everything to me, Ethan." It was a good performance, delivered with just the right amount of emotion. If I hadn't read her text messages, I might have believed her. "I feel the same way," I said, squeezing her hand. "We should probably head home soon, though. It's getting late, and these mountain roads can be dangerous in the dark." "Actually," she said, "I was thinking we could take the scenic route. You know, like we used to when we were dating. Make a real night of it." The scenic route. Of course. More curves, more cliffs, more opportunities for an accident. "That sounds perfect," I said. We finished dinner and walked out to the parking lot together. Laura's steps were slightly unsteady. She'd had 3 glasses of wine with dinner, probably to steady her nerves for what came next. "Are you sure you're okay to ride?" I asked, putting on my helmet. "I'm fine," she said, but her hands were shaking as she climbed onto the bike behind me. I started the Harley and pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward the scenic route that would take us along the ridge overlooking the valley. In my mirrors, I could see 2 sets of headlights following us, Adam and Tina staying back but keeping pace. The road wound through dense forest, with occasional breaks that offered spectacular views of the valley below. It was beautiful country, the kind of place that made you understand why people moved to Maine. It was also the perfect place to stage an accident. I took the curves slowly, letting Laura get comfortable with the ride, waiting for the right moment. When we reached the highest point on the ridge, a scenic overlook with a parking area and a sheer drop beyond the guardrail, I pulled over. "What are you doing?" Laura asked as I shut off the engine. "Thought we could enjoy the view for a minute," I said, removing my helmet. "It's been a long time since we stopped here." The overlook was deserted, except for us. With nothing but moonlight and the distant glow of town lights below, it was romantic, peaceful, and completely isolated. Perfect for what I had in mind. "Ethan, maybe we should," Laura started to say, but I cut her off. "I know about Adam," I said quietly. She went very still behind me. "What?" "I know about the motel, the text messages, the insurance policies. I know about all of it." Laura climbed off the bike, her movements careful and controlled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Riverside Motel, room 12. You, Adam, and Tina, planning my unfortunate accident." I turned to face her, and in the moonlight, I could see the fear in her eyes. "The only thing I don't understand is why you thought it would be so easy." "Ethan, please." 20 years, Laura. 20 years I've been the faithful husband, the reliable provider, the man who fixed everyone else's problems while ignoring his own." I stepped closer, and she backed toward the guardrail. "Did you really think I was that stupid?" "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You want me gone so you can cash in the insurance and skip town with your boyfriend. The only question is whether you were planning to push me over this cliff tonight or wait for the bomb under my truck to do the job." Laura's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 20 years ago. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted it to go this far." "But it did go this far. You planted a bomb in my truck, Laura. You were going to murder me." "It was Adam's idea. He said it was the only way." "The only way to what? Get rich quick? Start over with someone new?" I shook my head. "You could have just asked for a divorce." "You don't understand. The boutique is failing, I have debts you don't know about, and Adam promised to take care of everything after I was gone. I get it." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of the bomb. "Except I'm not gone, and now I have evidence of attempted murder." The sound of car doors slamming echoed across the overlook. Adam and Tina had arrived, probably wondering why we'd stopped. I could see them walking toward us, silhouetted against their headlights. "Ethan!" Adam called out. "Everything okay?" "Just having a conversation with my wife about trust and marriage," I called back. "You two might want to hear this." As they got closer, I could see that Adam was carrying something, a tire iron, probably from his trunk. Tina had what looked like a knife. They'd come prepared for violence, just in case their original plan fell through. "Laura, get away from him," Adam said. "We can still make this work." "How?" I asked. "Your bomb didn't go off, your plan is blown, and now you're talking about attacking me in front of witnesses." I gestured toward the road, where another car was approaching. Doesn't seem very well thought out. The approaching car was a state police cruiser, Detective Norris, right on time. Adam cursed and raised the tire iron, but I was already moving. 20 years of marriage to a cheating wife hadn't dulled my reflexes, and Adam was soft, slow, and stupid. I took the tire iron away from him and put him on the ground in about 3 seconds. Tina tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The overlook was surrounded by forest on 3 sides and a cliff on the 4th. When Detective Norris got out of her cruiser with her weapon drawn, Tina dropped the knife and put her hands up. "Well," Rachel said, surveying the scene, "this is interesting." Laura was crying now, huge sobs that shook her whole body. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry you got caught," I said. "Not sorry you tried to eliminate me." Adam was groaning on the ground, holding his ribs where I'd hit him. "This is assault," he wheezed. "You know, I want to press charges." "Against the man you just tried to attack with a tire iron?" Rachel asked. "After planting a bomb in his truck? I don't think that's going to work out the way you want it to." As Rachel cuffed the 3 conspirators, I stood at the guardrail and looked out over the valley. 20 years of marriage, ended on a cliff overlooking the town where we'd built our life together. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined, but it was the ending they'd chosen. "You okay?" Rachel asked, joining me at the rail. "I will be," I said. "Eventually. For what it's worth, I think you handled this better than most people would have." I thought about that as I watched the taillights of the police cars disappear down the mountain road, taking my wife and her lovers to jail. Better than most people would have handled it. Maybe, but I wasn't most people. I was a man who'd spent 20 years learning to eliminate, followed by 20 years learning to build. Now I'd have to learn something new, how to live with the wreckage of both. The Harley started on the first try, and I rode home alone through the darkness, thinking about second chances and the price of trust. Behind me, the overlook was empty except for the wind and the stars, holding its secrets like it had held so many others. Some endings, I thought, were really just beginnings in disguise, but that was a lesson for another day.